How's everyone doing today? Appreciate everybody joining me. I'm going to need a couple co-hosts, and I certainly do invite anybody that wants to come up and possibly speak. So if you want to raise your hand or if you want to co-host, it'd be much appreciated. If anybody out there is well versed in bonds, I'd appreciate you coming up. I do want to talk about bonds today, and I'm certainly not in depth. There's a lot of people out there, particularly like MJL, others out there that have really done some deep digging on bonds. So I appreciate you. If you want to raise your hand, I'll invite you up as a co-host. Um, just give me a second here while I kind of manage this. Give me a quick sec. Anybody else want to throw up their hands? I've got Kirchhoff. MJL, do you want to give me a hands up, a thumbs up or down if you want to come up and speak, brother? I know you're so well versed in bonds, and I can appreciate your insight on this. But up to you, guy. I'm not going to force you. Not expecting to have a big call today because I'm sure everybody's probably in the sauce with the Super Bowl already. And again, their food prepped and their snacks ready for the big game. It's going to be an exciting one. We got the San Francisco 49ers facing off against the Kansas City Chiefs. Pretty excited to see what the outcome on that one will be. We can certainly get into some tinfoil and how it relates to the overall picture of Bed Bath and Beyond, but we won't go there. We'll just sit back and enjoy the game and see what the outcome is. Personally, I'm a 49ers fan, always have been since I was a kid, whether it be Steve Young or Jerry Rice or Montana. But I am a Kansas City fan more recently in the later years once Mahomes showed up. So I do have a preference. I'm impartial to both, but the 49ers are definitely a fan favorite of mine. Um, just give me a quick sec here. I'm just gonna see if I can pull up. So sorry about that. Um, Cries to stop. You want to give me a voice check if you can, brother?
1, 2, 3.
Excellent. Thanks for joining me, brother. If anybody does raise their hand and you want to kind of invite them up to speak, so long as you have an understanding of who they are or can possibly control the narrative, I appreciate it. Um, Start off by saying, everyone, this is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor, nor anyone else that comes up to speak as a professional. I'm certainly not a chartered accountant, a lawyer, or anything as such. I just simply speculate. A lot of the due diligence has come out by some amazing people in the community, and I show much love to them for digging deep. I sent a couple people messages yesterday regarding these bonds, and one particular gentleman in particular actually spent about 8 to 9 hours last night from midnight onwards uh, doing some dig deeping on it. And that gentleman was Bruno. So a shout out to Bruno in terms of him going the extra mile. He did actually put out a post based on some of the information I shot his way. He's got a unique perspective on it. So I'm going to definitely share that with everyone. Um, and again, I encourage anybody out there that really wants to add to this conversation. This is more of a discussion because I don't have anything solid to the point where I can get everybody totally excited. But I do have some strong theses that perhaps the Brandon Meadows claim might be a little bit more significant than we thought. So I'm going to get right into it. Yesterday, a certain individual sent me kind of a link having to do with the bonds. And I'm going to kind of give a quick summary. And again, Anybody that wants to jump up, please do not hesitate to interrupt, add value to the conversation. I'm just trying to learn as much as I possibly can. And I thought by holding this space call, it could create a nice dialogue, and people that have further insight could come up and share, and we can kind of almost do the discovery and due diligence together. So, um, as we know, there was an initial claim by a gentleman named Brandon Meadows, and I think that claim of approximately $1 billion came in early in the month of June. And it was just past the initial, or sorry, the claim came in for $1 billion. And then later on, we saw an additional claim come in. And that total of all the claims represents 10,850,164 and $733,000.30. That is quite a massive claim that has come to the table. And the crazy thing about it is, normally under most claims, there is going to be a description as to what the claim is about. And in this situation, the admin priority claim of $10 billion has not been disclosed. It also came in after the fact. Once the claim date had passed, this claim was then therefore posted and approved by the judge at a later point in time. Um, in a sense, this claim of $10.8 billion, if you were to possibly look at it from a side of or an angle of ownership, what I'm going to try and explain is, you have a situation where a company's filed for bankruptcy. Back in November of 21, I believe it was, or 22, there was some shuffling of the bonds going on. Obviously, we know that BNY Mellon also put in a claim for their bonds, just over $1 billion claim for their bond holding positions. Just give me a second here while I try and pull up some notes. I apologize, I don't have everything totally organized, so I'm moving from tab to tab to tab. It's been a crazy day here, but let me just see if I can pull it up. Uh, Sorry, guys, for the delay here. So let me just get into the basics here. And again, a lot of this was written up by Bruno. So I do want to give credence to him for taking the time to actually ink this and make a post. He was up all night doing it. Issuance of bonds. The acquiring company usually issues bonds to raise capital for an acquisition. These bonds are essentially debt securities that the company promises to repay with interest over a specified period of time. So in the case of Bed Bath and Beyond, we have really three different bond issuances. We have some for August of 2024. We have some for the year 2034, and we have some set out for the year 2044. The acquiring company negotiates with the target company to determine the acquisition price and other terms of the deal. And we've seen in the documents there's been a lot of valuation methods applied to kind of establish the true value of both the subsidiaries and the assets of Bed Bath and Beyond through all the legal documents that were dropped in the billings. Valuation methods are kind of, whether it be a discounted cash flow analysis, comparable company analysis, precedent transactions, are often used to determine the fair price for the target company. Once the terms of the acquisition are agreed upon, the acquiring company may offer the shareholders of the target company a combination of cash, stock, and/or bonds in exchange for their shares. In this case, the acquiring company would offer bonds as part of the consideration for the acquisition. The acquiring company may make a bond exchange offer to the target company's shareholders, allowing them to exchange their shares for bonds of equivalent value. The terms of the exchange offer, including the interest rate, maturity date, and other features of the bonds, are outlined in the offer document. One thing we also have to realize is during this bankruptcy proceeding, a lot of the bondholders under the UCC, the Unsecured Creditors Committee, agreed within the plan that they would receive a make good of up to 2.5% of their bond value owed to them. What that means is that, if I owe you $1, in this case, you being a creditor, I went to you and said, hey, I owe you $1. But what if I was to resurrect this company and give you a possible exchange or equity later? Well, in this case, for some reason, and again, we have a lot of documents redacted and we don't have the full scope of everything. In this situation, the UCC and the bondholders agreed to receive up to 2.5% of the value of the money owed to them. So put that in perspective. Literally, for every dollar owed to them, they agreed to receive only 2.5 cents, which kind of triggered an alarm for me. Um, I'll just move on here just to give a little bit more background. Uh, Issuing bonds allows the acquiring company to preserve its cash reserves for other strategic purposes, such as capital expenditures, research, development, debt paying, paying employees, buying inventory. It's generally a way of basically raising that capital, that cash flow that has that is necessary to run a business, and that's why you'll find that bond offerings really involve the debt of a company. Um, there's tax benefits to bonds. Interest payments on bonds are tax deductible expenses for the acquiring company, which can reduce its overall tax liability and improve its financial performance. It's also a flexible financing way where bonds offer flexibility in structuring the financing of an acquisition, as the terms and conditions of the bonds can be tailored to meet the specific needs and preferences of the acquiring company and its investor. Um, as we know, uh, with the UCC agreeing to 2.5%, it is kind of given an indication that something more is to come. Because why would creditors, if this company was going to be liquidated, agree to only receive 2.5% on every dollar owing? It just, in my opinion, just doesn't make sense. So that would either lead you to the thesis or to the speculation that whoever is holding the bonds must be favorable or have an understanding as to the outcome of what this restructuring or Chapter 11 would be. Because if you're not favorable to the outcome and you're just a bondholder and you want to be paid off, why would you accept only 2.5% on every 100% owed to you? So in my speculation theory, I'm going to assume that these bondholders, or a majority of them, and I'll say 86% of them, because we know about the Glenn issue, him representing 14% of the bondholders. Well, the other 80%, 86%, in my opinion, must be favorable, because why would they agree to only receive, $2.5 on every 100 owed to them? What makes it really interesting in terms of these bonds is that when the equity was canceled, the plan administrator sent a letter to the DTCC. And in doing so, he said, I'd like you to cancel this equity, so long as there's no fraud involved. And he went on to have a standard kind of open letter to the DTCC requesting them to cancel the shares. However, they did not cancel the bonds. And for many of you who are aware right now, the bonds are actually still trading. I think it's a IBKR. I don't know if they're trading on Fidelity or not, but there's definitely enough resources out there to see that bonds are still pretty active out there for Bed Bath and Beyond, which is really really strange in a situation that if the company was going bankrupt or liquidating, so to speak, and the plan administrator knew of such, why would they not instruct everything to be canceled, including the bonds? And so if you go back to the S4 that had to do with the bonds, and I think it was November 20th, and I apologize, I don't have the date in front of me. Um, you'll be able to track down the issuance of those bonds when they're payable, such as August of 2024 and 34 and 44 and so on. But there could be a situation where, with the equity being canceled and them opening up a new company called DK Butterfly, which was issued over 900 million shares as a record on their filing under DK Butterfly. They actually have 901 million shares sitting in their registry. Um, it would tend to make you think, well, if there's new equity being issued in the new company or as a placeholder, yet the old equity is being canceled, yet the bonds are still trading, this isn't your typical situation. So, how could this apply to us? Within the filing, a member of the community came across the theory that the claim put in by Brandon Meadows on October 26th of 2023 for 10.8 billion is actually an offer to buy the company. The theory is that there'd be a bond exchange agreement resulting in 901 million shares outstanding at a weighted cost average of $12. So if you took 901 million shares, and as per the S4 of that bond indenture, you will find out that $12 times 901 million equals 10.8 billion. And so you can assume that the original 1 billion was the deposit before the claim cutoff point of July 14th. And just to mention, and Bruno points this out, that claim was actually submitted on the final day. So on the claim date, which is the end date to submit any more claims, that $1 billion claim was submitted by Brandon Meadows, and that typically, based on all auction proceedings and everything as such, could be considered a deposit. Again, speculation. Um, The reference of the price per share is actually in the S4. The company's obligations to accept old notes and consents in the exchange offer and the consent solicitations are subject to the satisfaction or waiver of certain conditions described herein, including the condition that the minimum price, as defined below, be no more than $12. Um, Again, $12 is kind of the set as kind of the minimum price here. So if somebody owned a boatload or made an offer to buy, let's just say the shell of the company, DK Butterfly, which has 901 million shares in it, and in that bond agreement, they have kind of a maximum of $12 associated as the value per share. $12 times 901 equals $10.8 billion. So, in theory, you could look at this claim from Brandon Meadows as an offer to buy the entire Shell Corp. As we know, some IP is being spun off. As we know, a lot of leases are being canceled. As we know, one distribution center was sold off. So whatever remains in the holding or in the DK Butterfly, in a sense, is available for purchase. And so when you do the math at $12 a share times 901 million, which is basically the share count for DK Butterfly, one could assume that this 10.8 matches the claim by Brendan Meadows. What's really interesting, again, is that the bonds are still trading and they were never canceled, which is very, very rare for a company that's kind of going, chapter 7. Usually they strip everything, it comes off the plate. You can't buy or sell or trade, but that's not the case in this situation. We can also add in the fact that Bill Pulte at one point in time also bought a bunch of bonds. Now, how much he bought, I'm not sure. There's two people out there that are trying to confirm the amount, but somebody's come back and said that Bill bought approximately $6.8 million worth of Bed Bath and Beyond bonds, um, which, in a sense, if he is part of a claim or maybe a affiliate party who's come together and made a claim of $10.8 billion, perhaps Bill does actually have a very close seat at the table, so to speak, at this point in time. So let's get some validity to the thesis that's going on here. And I'm going to kind of talk from Bruno's point of view because he was, the one that took the time to ink it out. Um, Bruno's issues are kind of as follows. If the bonds were exchanged already, then why are they still currently trading? The Bed Bath & Beyond ticker was retained by the company. This supports the theory that Ryan Cohen has bought all the stocks, By purchasing DK Butterfly 1, the shell, for $12 per share, then reverse merging the shell with Dream 545 and Dream on Me, putting it back on the market as Bed Bath and Beyond. So what that means is if a claim came in and somebody did buy DK Butterfly with the 901 million shares and they paid $12 a share, that would represent $10.8 billion dollars as kind of a offer to purchase, and if the deal's already done, that would justify why a claim is there. Because if I make an offer to purchase something, yet I have not received the asset that I've paid for or made an offer on, in a sense, I have the right to put a claim in saying, hey, you haven't delivered my purchase. You haven't delivered my assets that I acquired or bought. So, therefore, in a sense, I can put in a claim on you. So, Cohen bought long dated calls back when he originally bought his shares, and they were at $60 to $80 a share. Did he have an understanding of what the waterfalls might be ahead of time? Remember the fraud aspect, the 44.52 per share, and now this $12 per share for the purchase of the company? Well, it totals 56.52, which is just shy of those call positions that Ryan had put way back when, $60 to $80 a share. That to me kind of shows possible intention of knowing exactly what you're doing with a plan in mind. If we believe, and as per Bruno's theory, that Cohen was named as a credit through the proceedings because he is a DIP Philo lender, the DIP Philo has a lien on the IPs at 67%. What that means is that the secured creditors, the DIP Philo, Sixth Street, and whoever they're representing, does have a lien on the IPs, the intellectual properties, so the brands and everything that was sold off to both Overstock and Dream on Me. Well, they actually have a lien at 67% of those IPs, and that lien will reduce by 2.5% every quarter. So every 3 months, that lien will be reduced by 2.5%. So in 3 months from now, it'll obviously be, 64.5%. Another 3 months go by, you take off another 2.5%, which will bring you down to, 61 or whatever it is, until that DIP Philo loan is paid in full. The theory here would be that the initial 1 billion claim is going to be used to cover all the debt and obligations, and the 10.8 billion dollar claim is a distribution to class 9. The Philo and ABL matures on May 1st, 2024 if the bonds are still trading. I'm going to repeat that. The Philo and the ABL actually matures on May 1st, 2024, if the 2024 bonds are still in the marketplace and trading. And as we checked yesterday, the bonds are still trading, which is very weird for, again, a company that is liquidating. I'm going to take a little breather here. Maybe Christ, you want to do a little speaking or invite somebody up? I just need to grab a glass of water here, but if you could lead the charge for a sec.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So anyone have any questions would like to ask them? I'll be inviting up here. And if anything isn't clear, it's better to ask questions so we can uh, make it more clear. Maybe it will be clear for people who are too shy to come up and ask these questions. So if anyone has any question, just come up.
Everybody's being shy today. They're just ready to sit down and watch the game. So I'll get right back to it here, and then everybody can actually go have some fun and watch a good football game. So that Philo and ABL matures on May 1st, 2024, if the 2024 bonds are still trading. What that means is that the pre-petition Philo term loan facility, together with the pre-petition ABL facility, or the credit facilities as they're referred to, the ABL matures on August 9th, 2026, or on May 1st, 2024, if the 2024 notes are still outstanding on such date. Let me repeat that. So if the bonds are still trading on May 1st, 2024, the FILO and the ABL will mature on May 1st if the bonds are still trading. Being that Sixth Street, especially lending is owed hundreds of millions of dollars and has liens attached to the FILO, it wouldn't make sense to accelerate this triggering event if it didn't include them being paid in full. They would simply wait until the full term, which is stated, which would be obviously August 9th of 2026. The fact that the 24 bonds are still trading, meaning that the FILO and ABL would mature on May 1st, supports the theory that a deal is done. And I'm just going to add to that. The other aspect to it is in order to free any subsidiary, such as Bye Bye Baby or Harmon or any other subsidiary that was listed under the parent company, when you go into bankruptcy, because there's so much debt owed, there's actually liens placed on the subsidiaries, and that's through the bonds. And really, if you own the debt, so to speak, which owning bonds is, in a sense, you create a lien on the subsidiaries. So stuff cannot be spun out. And that's why bondholders hold a little bit higher class in terms of any recovery out there because they own the debt. So in this situation, what if the bonds are going to be paid back in full? The deal is, in a sense, done. And because the liens are removed, that allows something to be carved out. And as we saw with the Dream on Me and the Dream 545 deal, the IP was certainly spun out. But if you go read that 8K, I'm going to infer and speculate that a lot more was given in that asset purchase agreement with Dream on Me. As Jake has shared in many of the space calls, not only did they get the IP, Dream on Me for Bye Bye Baby, but they've also gone back to the table. They got additional store locations. They went back and they also got 30,000 SKUs uploaded to Shopify. And if you read that 8K in particular, it literally says that they were trying to sell all the assets of Bye Bye Baby, including the merchandise, the IP, the marketing materials. Every single asset was literally put up for sale. And if you read the wording and the verbiage of that 8K in section 801, it literally says that the buyer got everything. Now, it's specific to the IP in the asset purchase agreement details. Whereas the funny thing is with Overstock, if you go look at their IP purchase, you don't even get any of the details of what they acquired. Nobody's been able to see. There's been no disclosure, and it literally shows in the filing of the Overstock deal that there is no list of assets that were listed out. So that's kind of a strange one too. Um, So Bruno's of the theory, and he said it quite loud and proud, that Valentine's Day is the day that everybody's going to find out news. Um, in a sense, I do agree that Valentine's Day certainly has a prominent position, and I'm more of the school of thought that even if an announcement came on Valentine's Day, there will be a date of delivery, so to speak, for any either cash or equity issuance. It won't be immediate. These things take time, and what I'm going to suspect is it'll be any time between obviously, February 14th and all the way up to possibly May 1st is my reading of such, but I could be wrong, and I'm not trying to delay everybody all the way up to May. But I do believe that if we did find out good news on February 14th that we're either being made whole or we're receiving, cash plus equity, just knowing that and having that official announcement would allow everybody to make it till May 1st, if that be the last date. But again, speculation, not trying to draw things out, just trying to put all the parameters out there. Personally, from my point of view, from my speculation, I'm going to assume that we're probably going to find everything out uh, by March 12th. The reason being is, as Travis has noted, that the 180 days from when the plan was filed is kind of the final limit, the window to kind of reverse the bankruptcy through either fraud discovery or another situation. And so 180 days from when the plan dropped brings us to March 12th. And ironically, the government in the United States has announced that they are going to stop their kind of repo loan financing opportunity where as of March 11th, they won't be bailing out a lot of the institutions out there. And I just find it ironic how by March 12th, our court case, if the bankruptcy would be reversed through a fraud or some type of situation like that, March 12th would be the final day for such. So again, February 14th all the way to May 1st is really the window that I think we're going to be looking at. However, I do think it'll be happening a lot sooner from that, but I wanted to give that May 1st date just in terms of the way the bonds must be trading and how the FILO and the ABL would mature on May 1st with those 24 bonds trading. And because they're still trading, that really kind of puts the timeline in effect because the FILO and the ABL would be in full maturity on May 1st because the bonds are still trading. Maybe I could bring up some people with some questions or somebody to add some more value to this. I did want to get into some examples. Bruno's got a couple. I also have a couple other examples where we were able to see, Verizon's acquisition of MCI Communications. That was a telecommunications company that acquired MCI Communications, a long distance telephone and internet service provider. They acquired them for about $6.7 billion. And Verizon financed a portion of the acquisition through the issuance of corporate bonds. The bonds were well received by investors, and the proceeds were used to fund the purchase for MCI. The nation's largest phone company will pay stock valued at 4.8 billion as well as 488 million in cash. In addition, MCI Research will give its shareholders a special dividend of $4.50 a share, which is worth 1.46 billion. The companies expect cost savings of 1 billion a year by the third year. Just to give you another example, Dell agreed to pay EMC shareholders 24.05 per share. Bayer's acquisition of Monsanto in 2018. Shares of the company in the U.S. will no longer be traded on the New York Stock Exchange with Bayer, now the sole owner of Monsanto. However, Monsanto shareholders are going to be paid $128 per share. AT&T's acquisition of Time Warner in 2018. Under the terms of that agreement, the consideration will be paid includes $107.57 or 50 cents a share. And what they did was they gave 53.75 per share in cash and another 53.75 per share in AT&T stock. So they got cash plus equity, which came out to about $107 a share. Is this why Mr. Goldberg left out the CUSIPs for the bonds when he canceled the shares? You've got to understand that if you still have an existing CUSIP number and you have a new entity that's set up like DK Butterfly, and you do have somebody that comes in and buys that shell corporation, what if somebody comes in, buys that shell corporation, and then a private company like Dream on Me, for example, would reverse merge from a private company into a public company and use that ticker BBBY, which is a great recognition of Bed Bath Bye Bye Baby, great ticker for it. And then you end up going public yourself as Dream on Me, so to speak, but now called obviously Bye Bye Baby because that's what RC said. I want to, carve out your crown jewel. So you've got a situation here where even the plan administrator didn't even cancel the QSIP, let alone cancel the bonds, which are still trading. And obviously, a new entity was set up, DK Butterfly. Now, a lot of shills will argue is that the reason they had to set up DK Butterfly was because Overstock would not allow them to continue using the words Bed Bath and Beyond throughout the bankruptcy because it would damage their brand. But what we also notice though is that the Dream on Me hasn't come back and said, hey, you got to stop using Bye Bye Baby. The reason being is, again, there's speculation that Dream on Me or the guarantor of it signed with Dream 545, and this entity might be going public, so to speak. Um, Ultimately, I'll encourage anybody to add to what I've said here. Again, it's kind of all over the place. My apologies. I wanted to have some notes here, but the real TLDR is bonds aren't canceled. There's something called a triggering event back on that S4 that dropped, and the triggering event was actually changed to new wording. And if I could just try and pull that up here, I'll have to find it here. But this triggering event back in when the bond indenture was set up and the bonds were set up, there was something called a triggering event. And what that meant was that if the company had either a change of control or equity canceled, that would be known as something called a triggering event. And it seems to me, just based on timelines with Brandon Meadows' claim that came in October, that you've got a situation where something's definitely happened. A change of control, the equity was canceled, as we know. That to me is a triggering event, which leads to the idea that there's bonds out there. Who owns those bonds because they agreed to a very low settlement, and only you would only agree to a low settlement if you were going to receive something. And because the bonds are still trading out there, we know that Bill Pulte obviously invested into the bonds. That to me seems like, a James Bond move where this whole thing from reverse triangle mergers to bonds to ABLs to Philos to trademarks to TED, this thing is being so well come at from a chess game that sometimes the simplest answer is what it is. They bought the debt. They're able to make a claim. They own the company. They spun off the asset they wanted. They reverse merger into the Shell Corporation, and they use the same ticker and QSIP and go back up on the exchange. I'm going to stop there for a second. Sun Devil, you got your hand on. AA Jade, please help me out. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having the space, ABC. I appreciate it. One thing I wanted to note or to ask or put some more wrinkle brains on is in that second claim of Meadows, I believe a high, almost, I want to say it's a large amount is in the 503B9 category, which is a priority category. I don't know if you have it in front of you by chance.
I do, brother.
Can you tell me the amount? I'd hate to misspeak. Sorry, I was traveling and wanted to.
Yeah, so I'll list out. There was basically one, two, three, four in total. There was a
Different
priority.
categories. Yeah.
Yeah, so priority was registered at 164,733 claim. The secured claim was coming in at 425 million, and then the 503B admin priority claim came in at 425 million as well. And then the admin priority came in at 10 billion flat. So you have a total of 10.850. I'm going to assume, just based on the fact that Bed Bath or Bye Bye Baby literally opened up stores, had to restock everything. There was mention of inventory required. They added another 30,000 SKUs to the website. I'm going to assume that the secured one and the admin priority looks like merchandise purchases for me. So it looks like somebody on the outside was financing both the, kind of through the bond aspect of it, kind of financing, putting a claim out there, and then the 10 billion in min priority, I'm going to assume is kind of almost like the claim for everything. I want all
Yeah.
the
So
assets.
the limited research I've done on the 503B9 is for goods already sold. So something had to transpire between the claimant and the debtor to have that categorization. So I find that interesting. I'm just wanted to kind of highlight that if people wanted to do some research into the 503B9. I'm not a expert when it comes to bankruptcy claims, obviously. So, but the definitions I read are, something has transpired. So it could have been merchandise, to your point. I'm not exactly sure what that was, but
Yeah,
anyways,
that's awesome, Sun Devil. Thank you for bringing that up.
yeah,
The only reason I kind of speculated about the merchandise is because I did see somewhere, and I forget where it was, and I wish I would have footnoted or bookmarked it. I'm sure somebody out there listening has probably seen it too. But there was a merchandise situation where Bye Bye Baby borrowed 425 million for inventory, and just seeing the same numbers on the claim to me kind of is like, okay,
yeah,
well, dream on me. You didn't have very strong financial resources to begin with. In fact, some of the leases that you were looking to acquire, one of the landlords actually called you out on and said, we're worried about this lease here because we don't know the financial backing of the company involved. And yet, they were able to buy inventory, open up their 11 stores, all the marketing, obviously the resetting up of infrastructure, employees. They had to be financed for such. And to me, it looks like either somebody lent them a boatload of money and then said, I'm buying you as well. And if you're saying that the 503B9 is really for something that's kind of already been tendered, so to speak, or purchased, that could correlate to.
that's the way I read it. Like something has transpired. Um, so yeah, it's
Nice.
interesting.
Nice. I appreciate you
Yeah,
adding that.
yeah.
Jade,
I'll drop down. Thank you very much for having me up.
thanks, brother.
Yeah, you know what Son just brought up, that's a really excellent find. Thank you, brother, because that's a good digging. I want to definitely applaud that. I have a question for you, ABC. On this, is this the DK Butterfly that has been set up with 2,700 holders of ownership? Is that the same entity? Because one of these DK Butterflies came out with 2,700, shareholders already. And I wondered if that's where they were hiding the RSUs and some of the bonds, that they moved it over into that financial place to park it to then bring it forward. But I'm not sure. And that's why I'm asking this question. This is a question, it is not an assertion.
Oh, that's a great question. Could very well be. What kind of piques my curiosity is, especially with the number of 2,700, is if you go look at the Sixth Street lending arm that did the private equity raising, and I think they did 4 or 5 rounds of it now. They broke it into different segments. And that number of 2,700 investors or 2,700 registered shareholders, so to speak, makes me almost want to think that one of the funding rounds. I'm getting off track here, Jade, but there's something where it seems like some activists, affiliates, or a bunch of investors have kind of funded this. $10.8 billion is a lot of money, and I'm almost going to assume that Brandon Meadows is obviously a name attached to it, and I've gone through the idea that, Brandon Meadows, his affiliation with Addison Holdings, which is affiliated very closely to Hampton Office Group, the Hamptons, which is John Taylor. And John Taylor, acquired Jeffries. And Jeffries, literally set up IEP and worked with them back in the early 80s, and has worked with Carl Icahn on almost every corporate takeover or deal that Carl's been involved in.
Yes,
And
and as you speak to that, this time frame you speak of is exactly when there were some interesting movements around IEP. Carl took some money out. There was some borrowing going on, and we were for a long time going, where did all that cash get parked? And I'm wondering if some of those billions that were pulled out maybe found their way into this deposit, as you will, if this is it. And mind you, this again is speculation. I'm just throwing it out there. But I love where you're going with this, because what if we're seeing that 2,700 is a listing of maybe all of the quote unquote activists coming together, and that's why we don't see that list. And that's where I propose some of the assets are hiding and parked. But again, I'm going to turn it over to you. I just wanted to prompt your brain on that one because I know you were tracking deeply this summer what Carl was doing with IEP. So thank you. Please go in. I hope I didn't interrupt. I just want you to cook with more pots.
No, I appreciate such. The Carl situation is really interesting for several reasons. One, if you look back to when Sixth Street jumped into Bed Bath and Beyond, it was at that time that Carl was doing a $400 million ATM, or he basically raised $400 million for a merger acquisition or a strategic investment, which was right around the time that Sixth Street stepped in. Obviously, the law firm involved was also representative of Jeffries, who was also involved with Bed Bath and Beyond, who was also involved with GameStop. So if you do follow the money, you've also got to realize that there was also one filing that Carl did where he held a holding back. And what I mean by that is that at the time he had 17 holdings, but he only reported the revenue or the numbers for 16 of them. And he literally put on the bottom of that filing is that I have to file, I'm filing this with you, the SEC, but I ask permission for an NDA to not disclose this publicly, and I will file it with you directly. So there's still a holding that Carl has not shared publicly that he has ownership or a stake in, that nobody is aware of, obviously, except for the SEC. And that is what was intentionally done. And then you saw that obviously the Hindenburg report came out and attacked Carl, and he lost a boatload of money. And then you saw him restructure his entire private and corporate funding aspect and borrow a boatload of money and leverage, the shares that he had and the equity that he had. Another interesting aspect is that obviously with him resigning from Newell and Newell being involved a lot with this kind of Kirisu possibility, which I still speculate they're certainly involved in this Kirisu in some capacity, even though that Carl, sold his shares and Brett stepped down. I do believe they have the right people in place, because to me, the Newell aspect is being kind of really contingent, because I always believe that the shell was a perfect fit, or the assets and the distribution and the architecture underneath Bed Bath and Beyond, never mind the retail facing aspect. I always believe that the structure underneath with the data centers and the warehouses, combined with GameStop and what Carl does in terms of the way he builds his businesses, would be a perfect match, especially for Westinghouse and Newell and so on. But if you do follow the money, it makes it very, very interesting. And that's why, one day I got the courage to bet, Bill $5,000 publicly, because I do believe that the financing of what's coming, what's needed in order to have a restructuring of this magnitude, you need some pretty deep and smart, deep pockets and smart people. And that's where I think that we saw the picture with RC and Carl on a certain date appear for a reason. And that was his one warning to the world: I'm coming, man. I'm coming. And, that's really where I think we're at now. What I'm starting to speculate, and we have many theories out there. Obviously, we're missing a lot of the info. A lot of the documents have been redacted. And a lot of us got on the bandwagon that the 11.8 is representative of possible fraud, because look at the math. Shit, there was 11.8 in share buybacks. Oh, shit, that could give us, $44 a share when you do the TSO divided into that. And now, another thesis that I'm kind of presenting here with many others who have come to the table is, well, shit, what if this is just simply a claim because somebody bought a carve out or bought the shell, and that shell is holding a carve out, so to speak? There's so many ways that this can obviously go down, but what was really caught my fascination was Bill's decision to obviously engage with the community, and then Bill's decision to invest heavily into the bond aspect for Bed Bath and Beyond, and then to see the plan administrator not cancel the bonds, not cancel the QSIP, but cancel the equity. Yet a new holding company is opened with approximately 901 million shares, which, when you go back to that bond indenture, the S4 literally talks about issuing 900 million shares. And then you have these dates correlating with, May 1st, that if the ABL and the FILO will be all matured and paid off by this date. It just really, I think we're in the end game. I think we're getting very, very close to understanding what the picture and the outcome will be. Today, I just wanted to talk about bonds because it's kind of given me this possible idea that this claim through Brandon Meadows, who has very, very strong ties to a lot of people that have worked with Carl before. What if this bid is simply the true market value? Because again, values have to be assigned on a company before a merger or an acquisition of a company is established, because you got to set the true value of it. What if it was deemed that, it's a $10 billion company, as the value is set? And in doing so, if you finance it, you get involved with all the debt through bond ownership, and yeah, I'll leave it at that. Does anybody else want to add? Jade, please.
Well, this is wonderful. Thank you so much for diving into this conversation. And I do not know much about bonds, for full disclosure. So I really have a question more for you, which is, in this research that you've been doing, and you know, uh, mind you, I trust you, right? So there's no doubt on what you're doing. Don't hear any of that, and no one listening hear any doubt. It's more for experiential. Did you learn of anything to indicate that this is unusual, which like illuminated then that possibly we're looking at bonds already post deal, and that no, they usually bond trading isn't happening when they freeze shares and remove shares like they do. Usually bonds are frozen and or remove or posed in some way. They don't stay live like this, which is one of the reasons why you kept looking, because this was unusual. Is that one of the pieces or not? Can you frame anything around like the about bond movements that generally they're frozen with shares when deals are done, and that's why this was, you saw movement, and the movement was the bond, so you investigated. Is because that's special, that's what drew you in? Can you speak to that, because I am so naive to the bond financial product market?
Yeah, likewise, Jade, I am certainly not an expert on bonds. There's a guy up here. Oh, MJL, you're listed as a speaker, man. I'd love you to jump in on this. MJL really understands his bonds extremely well, whereas I'm just starting to scratch the surface of it. But yeah, that's really what got my concern is why is there so much activity on these bonds? What's going on? Why are they trading, so to speak? Why was Bill able to, go and invest in them? And again, I don't know what date, whether he did it back in June of last year or July of last year, or whether it was recent. Again, I take it from a very, very top level approach. But MJL, please add in here, brother. You have a wealth of knowledge, and you to me, for me, brother, you are one of the top in the community because you dig excessively deep, and that's really what I appreciate.
Hey, thanks for the kind words. How you guys doing?
I'm good.
Hello, it is me. I was wondering how to do a BBBYQ bond. I look in account and there is nothing. Why is this?
Well, apes, just bear with us. We're certainly no financial advice on
We,
how to buy them, but from what I understand
we
from the community, the only place right now, Fidelity's not offering them, but apparently IBKR is. MJ, please
Hey,
jump in.
yeah, no problem. So I wanted to throw in a couple things, but I'm getting ready for the gym too, so I'll kind of just hop in and out unless you're going to wrap it up. But specifically to the S4s, there was a couple things that I wanted to talk about. I missed like 10 to 15 minutes. Did you guys talk about the global note holder portion yet, or no?
No, not at all.
And then also relating to the Bruno post, I was just kind of curious. So who was the speculation that Brandon Meadows might have like represented, like from a BNY Mellon or someone else? Do you know, or was it kind of like a private party from your understanding?
I think there was somebody that made an original post, Nobles. I forget the handle that
Oh,
it
yep,
was
I
on.
saw that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, I don't know enough in terms of what that significance involves. Maybe you can kind of shed some light.
Yep. So where I was going with the global, so I think it's called the Global Bondholder Services Corporation, and so the significance that I couldn't figure out, and I think whether it's the $12, $14, and kind of, I feel like the S4s were doing multiple things, which I'll kind of talk about here in a second. But it's all talking about like who gets seniority over those notes. So BNY Mellon, like you touched on, they obviously did their claim, which I think was kind of it was either mid June or mid July. I couldn't remember, but they were kind of laying claim to kind of all of them. They're obviously the underwriter. I think everybody knows that too. And they also own a portion, or they are one and the same with Equinity, which is obviously the last place that we knew where our shares were. So relating to the S4s, that global note holder, specifically what I couldn't figure out, I think Sonny D was the one who originally found it, but it was a T1 by Wilmington Trust. And specifically, I couldn't ever find a cancellation or termination of that agreement. And the significance of it really, like, I think the termination of the bond offering was like on the 6th of January the following year, possibly the 5th. But ultimately they terminated it. But from what I understood was when they did that agreement with Wilmington Trust was basically putting up the cash up front for it. If you read the T1, and I'm happy to kind of source it afterwards too. I got it bookmarked somewhere, but basically that was kind of like a placeholder for who does the indenture sit with today and who has like the super seniority of those notes, right? And so we're trying to figure out whether it's BNY Mellon or if it's this global note holder, or whether it's Wilmington Trust. So that's kind of where I went with that portion of it. The uniqueness of that was, if you remember, December 5th or December 7th of 2023 was the 1-year anniversary, and within that same S4, there's language to where they can do the early redemption or early purchasing, or I can't remember the specific language, but basically it's where they're basically pulling back the bonds for, I wanted to say something like $7 or $5, I can't recall, but it's specifically that 1-year anniversary. And I remember there was like a lot of hype dates, like right around end of November and early December. Well, one of them I think was December 5th, and that was the same day as like that first opportunity for them to pull that back from the Wilmington Trust, if it was still there. And that's where I tried to go down the hole to try to figure out if that Wilmington Trust, which they set up upon signing so November 20th, they set it up with Wilmington Trust. I couldn't ever find something that showed that they terminated it when the bond offering was also terminated. So that kind of gets into speculation of, oh, well, maybe everyone was supposed to, or they were supposed to pull back the offering. It's like, okay, well, did they really do it? And then was there an actual agreement that said if they were terminated early that they would be kind of not refunded back, but kind of wanted to pause there just to kind of see like if you catch the flow of what I'm trying to say there.
Yeah. Are you this kind of brings me to the idea that, because the triggering event basically said that if there is, I forget the wording they use, whether it be a cancellation of shares or a change of control or something, Bed
Yep.
Bath and Beyond would have to buy back all the bonds, right? Because there's a change of control or a cancellation of equity. But there was also verbiage where they updated that clause saying that the triggering event could be also issued by an issuance of equity. And I forget, and I've got to find it. I promised earlier here in the space I'd find it, but I've been too busy just listening, obviously, to this conversation. I will find it. But basically, the inference would be is that Bed Bath & Beyond also had the option to not pull back the bonds because of this new update. So to me, that kind of means like you would expect, if there was a change of control or a cancellation of equity, that transaction would force all the bonds, which would cancel them. But in doing so, Bed Bath & Beyond would obviously pay off those bond debts, which would free the liens, which then would allow somebody to come in and do a carve out of, Bye Bye Baby, for example. But then when they updated saying that it could be an issuance of equity, well, what if DK Butterfly is kind of that new issuance of equity, and therefore that became, in a sense, the triggering event, and they didn't have to cancel the bonds because they kind of got the best of both worlds, or everything. I could be going off track here.
No, you're good. one of the pieces of speculation specifically on the change of control, which I believe was also event of default, and whether it was the official reason or not, the January event of default was that failure to prepay and over advance, right? So that's kind of where my head went with it also, and it's really kind of just all under that same umbrella of, you know, who has the bonds, right? Who do they belong to? You know, BNY has the claim. That's kind of like mid 2023. If there was a quote unquote change of control or event of default in January, that might mean a different party has claim to the bonds. And then that S4, like you guys were touching on, that global note holder services corporation just really caught my eye, because it's like, well, maybe they got ahead of all of it and said, no, no, no. In the event of any type of default or bankruptcy or whatever, like, we get the bonds. And I believe there was one other um, area of speculation that would be kind of even above the global note holders. I just I couldn't get it out of my mind that I couldn't find the termination of the Wilmington Global Note Holder Services Corporation. So that was just kind of like my piece on that. But I'll kind of just pause there, see if you have anything you want to add or anything.
Okay, do I understand you right? Above that global, you can't find anyone else holding that note. So right now, it's sitting at global, correct?
Well, think of it more like who has priority to the ABL, right? So it's kind of just the classes of priority of the debt, really.
Okay,
So
that
yes,
makes sense. Okay, but that's the top dog. Like we're getting the correct
for
list of who's at the top in the correct order.
for the senior notes specifically.
Got it.
Yep, for
Okay.
the senior notes. Yep.
Thank you so much for breaking that down. And I don't want to trouble you. I do hear that you have a busy day ahead of you. Yet, when you have a moment, would you be willing to write just even a short thing? It doesn't have to be big, just so there's something memorialized. I know many of us would appreciate it. And if someone takes notes to do that, but just to write that order down and thank you, because I missed it. I just don't want you to have to repeat it. And I
Yep.
will replay it to get it, but just that might be helpful. Thank you.
Yep. No problem. And correct me if I'm, and I'd happy to do that too. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong too. So the S4s, in my opinion, are just, they're more significant than just the bond offering extension and the 2027s, et cetera. Obviously, they're doing multiple things there. They're, you know, setting up that global note holder, but then they're also doing they're also establishing what the subsidiary guarantors are. And I just, you know, I have a really hard time believing that all of the professional service fees that we've seen come through with restating financials back to 2020 and restating NOLs and establishing NOLs at the subsidiary level and restating financials at the subsidiary level. It's really hard for me to get past the idea that, okay, did they not somehow carve out the debt at the subsidiary guarantor level so that they could do all those different carve outs? Because any business today not operating with individual P&Ls and balance sheets, like, they're just, it's not a thing in corporate finance. Like, they all of that type of financial detail is immensely detailed for any type of Fortune 500 company, really. But that was kind of the other kind of note that I wanted to make on the S4s, was just multi-purpose and more than just the bond offerings, because we know that the bond offerings were terminated in early January, but whether the global, whether the subsidiary guarantors, and whether all the other pieces that were in those November filings were terminated, I don't believe so. I think those are still good. As we saw, obviously, I mean, subsidiary guarantors are a good, obviously, indication of that.
I think that's well said, MJL, because when you think about it, if you break down the Knowles and everything that's involved from the bonds, the debts to everything, you break it down on a subsidiary level, and your intent is to do a carve out, well, you don't want to have to pay somebody else's debt for part of an asset that really is something that you don't want to carve out. So by breaking it down into a subsidiary level, establishing a null value for that particular subsidiary or that asset that's in its own holding space, how many bonds are attributed to it, and doing all these calculations, in a sense, you get the true value of whatever that carve out might be, and you get the true representation of the knolls and the bond exposure to it. So it's the best way. And that's actually how Bed Bath and Beyond was kind of set up originally 52 years ago, was through a safe harbor, rule 147, where everything is broken down by state. And what they did here is they obviously created these separate entities underneath each and every entity, so these subsidiaries. So if you do have a bye-bye baby proposition with all its assets being held, and you establish what the knoll value is for that bye-bye baby asset, so to speak, or it as
Yep.
a going concern, everything falls into place where you're not overpaying or underpaying, and there can be no counter argument that, oh, they got too much knolls compared to we should have had this much because this asset's worth this much. And that's the whole accounting of this entire thing, is that by establishing the true value and seeing this claim come in, it makes me suspect that all those legal billings that you mentioned of, calculating the knolls, doing the valuation of the businesses, has set forth the value of what that enterprise would be as a carve out, and that's why the claim came in after the date. And I did some digging to find out that Brandon Meadows and Mark Taylor and Jeffries, which are activist investors, and then their JAT Capitals put Marcus forward and everything like that. I just look at all the correlations between all the people that are involved in that. It lends me to believe that this could be simply just a straight purchase where a private company comes in and buys the subsidiary or the assets that they want and becomes a public company.
And I can't and sorry to hop in there real quick, Blend, and then I'll I got to get ready and get in the car, so I'll just kind of shut up for a little bit. But the other piece of, I think I remember Gustavo and Triton. I wanted to say that there was a specific combination of subsidiary, kind of like a consolidation of basically their different business units, and that's what I thought was really kind of interesting with the S4s, because that to me was kind of like breaking it back out again. So I'll come back, and when I make that post, like Jade asked, I'll kind of include that angle. I wanted to say it occurred in like 2020, very shortly after Triton and the 10 other board members all came, and so it was part of the optimization of corporate blah blah blah. So I'll try to find that resource too. But I thought it was weird because it was kind of like a legal entity shift that they had just done a couple of years prior, and then they were doing it again in November. So I'll find that data when I post it.
Awesome, brother. Appreciate it. Blend, go ahead, man.
Well, I just had two questions. The first question is, when you're factoring the value of these knolls, are you also looking at the debt forgiveness? So, because it's a little more, you can't just have it one way. You actually have to account for the debt forgiveness. That's question number one. And question number two is, looking at this bloated claim, what about the bar date? What role is the bar date? Because the claim was subsequent to the bar date. So by law, isn't the claim already, like, isn't it just, you guys are kind of talking about an irrelevant claim because it's been barred?
No, actually, the judge allowed this claim. Both claims were allowed by the judge, so they are accepted. And again, making a false claim in bankruptcy court is a federal felony. So
you're telling me the judge, isn't there a claims administrator? Like, there's not just a judge. The judge doesn't look over the claims. There's a plan administrator and a claims administrator. So
yeah,
I'd like to see where the judge actually ruled that this was okay claim.
And it's
Because
the plan administrator put it forward to the judge, and the judge approved it and put it through. This was back in July.
And you have that, but the claim wasn't made till late July. So can you show me what documentation the judge is allowing this claim? Because that's not typical.
Real quick, which claim are you talking about? Because there's the BNY Mellon $1 billion claim, and then there's the two different ones from the Brandon Meadows. So I'm
talking about the Brandon Meadows claims. Weren't they subsequent to bar date?
Those ones I don't know. The BNY Mellon one was for sure mid-June, mid-July, but the other ones I will defer to somebody else.
Yeah, I'm talking about Brandon Meadows.
No, the Brandon Meadows, the last claim that came in for $10 billion was definitely after the date. I believe it was 9 days past the date.
Yeah, so it's an irrelevant claim. It's been barred.
How's it being barred?
It's barred by the bar date. That's what a bar date is. It bars the claim. So nobody's taking this claim serious because that's what it is. It's just a joke of a claim. Like so if you have documentation that the judge actually said that this is anything other, because judges don't usually review claims administration process. There's actually a claims administrator, and the plan administrator doesn't handle it either. So again, I do want to ask a couple of questions. Like, you have 400 people in here. What is your experience with bankruptcy to speak? You guys are speaking on this topic. Like, you guys, is this something that you guys are learning on the fly, or is this something that you guys have done for years?
Well, myself
Right.
personally,
We came in at the beginning explaining that we are not professionals and no one is, and no one is employed in that. And we are having a discussion among friends who have a shared interest. That has been made incredibly clear. No one is passing excuse me, themselves off as a professional.
Glenn, to answer to that, as I started out the space call, I was just more or less encouraging discussion here, and I'm certainly not a bond expert or a bankruptcy expert.
I can answer the question, ABC.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so Glenn, Holly Etlin signed off on it.
Signed off on that it was in. Okay, now the claims process, usually there's an objection process to the claims. They have to be processed. Just because you make a okay, bankruptcy is about staking a claim within a certain amount of time period, right? So just because you staked a claim, they might have accepted the claim. That doesn't mean that they actually, that just means that they acknowledge the claim. It doesn't mean that they accept that they owe that money. Because I've seen this in other bankruptcies where there's just ludicrous. There's one where a shareholder put in a $1 million claim against the company because he lost $1 million. And it obviously got they got rid of it.
It got rejected. Yeah,
Yeah, but it got rejected.
Reject the claim.
Yeah, it got rejected so far after the date. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It didn't happen. It didn't immediately get rejected. It got rejected on a footnote, like months post petition. Like it wasn't something that happened immediately. So I mean, there's a whole process. You guys understand they have to go through every claim, and it's so subordinate, being that it's barred. That the problem I have is that there's a relevancy fallacy where you guys are talking about things that are not very relevant, and then you guys are looking at you're not looking at disclosure statements and the plan is and which tells you what happened. So instead of looking for things that aren't there, look for things that are there, because bankruptcy is a very transparent process for a reason.
So just
and the claim is there because Holly Etlin signed off on it. I don't know what you don't understand about months after the date. It just answered your question, so I think that's all.
And I'll just add to that, Blend. So the same individual actually put in a $1 billion claim earlier on, well before the bar date for those claim dates, and that was accepted. 2 other additional claims came in for another $425 million each. Those were accepted. And then the final one of $10 billion, which came after the date, was accepted as well. And Holly Etlin, obviously in charge of the entire process, accepted all 4 claims, 3 of the 4 being on time and the other one being late. And again, you're right. They do have to go through the process. This is a valid claim. And what's really unique about these claims, though, is that although they're classified as either a min priority or secured or whatever, they have no reference as to what the claim is for. It identifies no assets, no what's the debt for, what the invoices are for. And so you would think it'd be a fictitious claim, especially when you look at other court cases and they really have to itemize everything. But 50% of all our documents have been redacted. There's also a dealer management agreement, which was redacted by everybody involved, including the UCC committee. So we won't find out until we find out.
And super fast, just to hop in, I know you guys got your hands up, but if it is truly representative of the bonds, then whether we're talking Chapter 7 or Chapter 11, you're right. Somebody needs to make a determination. Well, does BNY Mellon have it, or does Brandon Meadows have it? So I still think there's relevance in discussing it.
Yeah, but you also have to there's a disclosure statement. You guys understand what the disclosures. I mean, like, there's certain documents you got to look to in a bankruptcy and then delegate by reference or by relevancy. So disclosure statement is a very important statement because it has to disclose what's going to happen. So there can't be nothing can happen in bankruptcy that's not disclosed in the disclosure statement. So that's kind of the issue I'm having. Go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering where you're getting all this information from. Like do you where did you get your your bar? Or like,
Oh, I'm a pro se
lost
litigant.
control?
You guys know, if you don't know, I took a bankruptcy to the Supreme Court in 2018. So I went through that process. I made a lot of mistakes in that process, and I understood the process. Like I said, so I can see things that happened in that case, and I can see what happened in your case, and what the difference is and what the similarities are. Like I said, there was actually it was actually shameful because one of the shareholders that filed the fictitious claim was actually supposed to be representing us on the equity committee, and he filed $1 million claim. I think at the advisement of his attorneys, thinking that he was going to get something, and they just, months later, they just tossed it because it was completely irrelevant. So what
So
we're
you're
kind of
not like
saying is,
you're not like a partner or anything like that, or
no.
and you don't specialize in Chapter 11 bankruptcies. You just you were involved in
Yeah, and
something.
basically, when you do a counterclaim and you don't have anything to base it, you basically be giving a speculation or opinion. That's all you're doing.
Have you worked with large corporations, Blend? You say like, cause you sound like super stressed right now. That's all I'm saying. Like you sound super stressed, and like something's bothering you. But like, so I'm just wondering, like, have you worked with like large corporations and
I see where you're
like
going
how
with
many
this, bro. It's
like how many
hilarious. Chad, you're funny, dude. You're a funny guy,
I'm just
Chad. You're a funny
I'm
guy.
just wondering.
No,
Hey,
of course
Blend.
not. I go against
Hey,
those
Blend.
people.
Blend, I've never heard of you, but I've heard you talk here for a couple of minutes. What are your intentions behind stopping by this space and speaking?
Well, it's just fascinating. And so to answer Chad's question, I actually go against those companies. So to say that I'm with the corporations, it's actually the opposite. I'm against those corporations. I'm against those dirty people. But like the whole grifts of Bed Bath & Beyond is that you guys are actually siding with the corporations, because what happened is there's a guy named, was it Neely Das that tried to fight this? There's other people that tried to fight it. Everyone that fought it, you guys said, no, we don't want to fight a bankruptcy, but you guys should have been fought in the bankruptcy. And then when Polday comes out months later, when all your claims are barred, you have no rights. Now you guys want to look for answers and fight. So that's a shame.
Yeah,
So it's actually the
can
Neely
opposite. So
probably.
you
Doss?
guys are laying
Hey,
Neely
down.
hold
Doss?
on a second, Blend. I can
It's like
probably
you guys
speak
are
for
like,
everybody
go ahead,
here,
Chad.
and when
Neely
I say
Doss is
that
a
nobody
snake.
fucking cares about your opinion.
Neely
Well, that's
Doss is a
awesome.
snake.
What happened
Blend,
with Neely Dodds? So go ahead and tell me about Neely Dodds again.
Mr. Blend, I do have a. I think we, as a community, probably some people disagree with your assertion that Neely Doss was best representing shareholders, and I do. There are reasons to believe he had different intentions. So I don't want to talk about that. What I do want to understand is the premise behind your statement of a claim being barred, and where you're even coming up with this kind of notion, because I've never heard of it so far. I've never seen it. It hasn't
That's what
been
a bar
mentioned
date
any.
is. A
No,
bar
no,
date.
no.
So learn
Hang
about
on, hang on.
bankruptcy.
Let me finish,
Yeah, learn
please.
about bankruptcy. It's called a bar date for a reason.
Okay. No, hang on. It was these claims were admissed like before the court, and they were accepted even after those dates and approved by the judge. So any kind of claim of a bar date is just, to be honest, it's it's not even relevant necessarily. And so I'm just curious why you're bringing it up if it's not even relevant to this particular case. And then thirdly, I would love to understand your qualifications for educating us all on bankruptcy and giving financial advice. Thank you.
Well, I'm not giving financial advice. There's no financial advice to give. And to
What do
answer your
you
question,
what do you like to call it?
well, we're just having a conversation. The man said he wants to have a conversation. He's talking about net operating losses. So my initial question
No,
was,
it's more that you're speaking with like 100% certitude as opposed to having a discussion. That's
well, there
all.
is a bar date. Do you know? Okay, I appreciate where you're
I
going with that. But
understand.
it's a
Trust me.
misunderstanding.
I understand what your assertion is, but I just I think what's actually transpired in this case is entirely different than what you're ascertaining and speculating. So, like, it's just not a worthy discussion to bring up.
Well, no, there is a bar date. That's the problem. So we have a misunderstanding, Neon, right? So we can
No,
clear
we
this up.
don't. We don't.
You just said
There's
there's
a
a
bar date,
misunderstanding about.
and then
I'm telling you,
there's.
there's a bar date and there's a claims process. And what you guys are doing is you're conflating the acceptance of a claim on a ledger with the claim being processed and being
No, that's not
The
exactly
legal
what
That's
happened.
100% what's happening. That's 100% what's happening. There's a
Okay, so
misunderstanding.
that's 100% certitude, right? You're claiming, right?
No, I'm saying that,
So
that there's a misunderstanding of the
Okay.
process. There's a
Thank you, man.
misunderstanding
Thank
of
you for your
what
expertise,
accepted
Blend.
means. Yes.
so
So you guys are
Blend.
conflating. It's all conflating.
Do you have skin in the game,
Blend.
Blend? Do you even have skin in the game? Because he's emotional, worked up. We're not even this worked up. We're all in. Do you have skin in the game, Blend? Yes,
exactly. We have a right to talk about whatever the fuck we want to talk about, Blend, and we're not misleading anybody. We're discussing.
Blend,
you're misleading people because you don't understand what a bar date is. You don't understand what's happening to that
I
thing.
do actually.
You don't understand what happened to your shares, and there's 400 people in this room that are being misled.
We
I
know
do understand what a bar date is, Mr. Blend. So just don't project onto me. You're just trying to make us look stupid when it's just not. It's not working. Thanks for coming to visit, though, bud. I appreciate it.
This is like going to a party you were never invited to.
So let me
understand why you're here, Blend.
So MJL was like cooking, giving us some really good information, and then here you come with.
Was it good information though, Chad? I'm challenging him on his information. I asked him what net operating losses, and there's a debt, like when you forgive debt, that offsets the net operating losses. So you have to value it. That like there's a value to ascertain. It's not just something you could distribute and say, hey, we're gonna pick and choose. This isn't what bankruptcy is. Like that's the problem. Is you guys do not understand what bankruptcy is.
But we don't
at all.
know what are at the subsidiary level or
problem
Hold on.
that we keep running into is that you keep coming in here assuming that you understand what we're doing. And when we give you clarification and say, actually, hey, this is the conversation and what tone and where we're going with it, you won't accept that and you press it and try and form it into something that isn't. Blend, we have the right to hypothesize, kick around ideas, question, and that's what's been happening. We are not ascertaining for sure that we know a thing. In fact, one of the biggest pieces is we say because there's so much redacted information that we are doing the best with what we have, and here's some of the ideas. It's not that these are proclamations and that they're rules and it is written in stone. Right now, we are in an evolving process to get more information and we're talking about it. So what frustrates me is that you automatically assume coming in here that you think you know what my prerogative is, and it's not. And I understand it's a technique to try and get an emotional reaction, so I bait back emotionally and destabilize, and then it devolves.
Oh, you
But
destabilize.
sweetie,
This ain't an
we
emotional
don't want to
conversation.
do
It's a
that.
factual
We
conversation.
just
Okay, so
don't
it's not
want to.
factual. It's not a factual conversation because someone's already responded to you that Holly Etlin signed off on it. It didn't get thrown off the first $1 billion claim. So you haven't responded to the facts that people said to you, and yet you're still going on. Personally, I'll take a passive seat in this. So it was interesting that you brought up the point that it's past the bar date. I didn't know that. But then someone else countered you and said Holly Etlin signed off the thing. I didn't know that either. I'm here to learn. So you should come here with an open mind instead of just, doing what you're doing, which is trying to stir shit. Your points are fair and valid and they can be discussed.
Yeah, let me step in here. And well said. And Blend, I'm not trying to be contrarian. I invite discussion at all times, my man. But you do keep on referring to the bar date, and they were signed off. But the claims, 3 of the 4 claims, came in a lot earlier too, and they were approved. They were literally accepted into the court as claimants. They were in the total claim value. My question to you is, you're right. Debt would have to be settled under these subsidiaries, especially if they split up the Knowles. You're also going to have to split up the debt assigned to those subsidiaries. My question to you is, what if the fucking bondholders themselves own the debt and they're favorable and they're the ones that are taking over the company? Guess what? If I'm fucking buying a company and there's 10 million or $100 million of debt, but I know I can make $50 billion with my long-term plans, I'll swallow that pill, especially if I have control of the bonds. And that's the whole point to this. And the other point.
But you can't do that in the bankruptcies, Ochan. Like it's a strict priority rule for a reason. You're describing bankruptcy fraud essentially.
No,
like you have to disclose everything in a bankruptcy.
Not if a private company is involved and they want it, and you have a partnership with them and say, hey, I'm interested in doing this. You want to become an affiliate? You want to become a partner? Let's fucking relational leverage.
You can't do that. That's the problem. That's not what the process works. That's bankruptcy fraud, which you're describing. So let's go back to the claim. Let's just do things one by one. The claims process. Now, just because something's accepted, it hasn't been paid out, right? So there's a whole process. They're going to acknowledge that the claim, they essentially are just acknowledging that there is a claim, that it exists, but they haven't gone that far in the process to try to distribute the money to it. I mean, you can put your thumbs down. I'm just speaking facts, right? Like
They haven't distributed anything to anyone, so we're not going to expect anything yet. We haven't even finished the court dates yet, and you're coming here telling us we're going to get nothing. This is a speculative play. You don't have all the information, we don't. It's fair what you started with, but you still coming on when people told you that Holly Etlins signed it off. Like, what's the point? Come with another point that we can discuss.
Well, he doesn't even have
because they didn't sign off. Like, what you guys are saying, sign off. You don't understand. They didn't sign off.
Hold on a
like
second.
you think they signed
Hold on
off.
a second.
Go ahead.
Brian. I want to go right back to the basics. I want to go, and we'll get to some hands up here, but I want to go right back to the basics. First and foremost, we can't buy, we can't sell, and if there's discussion going on, there's no misleading anybody. The 400 people that are in here, there's no pumping and dumping, there's no fucking buying or selling. We're kind of like at a football game, like the Super Bowl that's going to happen very soon. We fucking invested into a play, we lost our equity, but we also look into the background and see, shit, there's a lot of weird shit going on here. Guess what? Maybe the game's not over. And we're in the fucking fourth quarter. We're hoping for a Hail Mary, and we know it's 0-0, but we keep on getting people coming into the community saying, no, you're going to lose your shit. And when we ask them, hey, are you invested in this too? We'd love to hear your discussion points. No, you guys are just going to lose your shit. And then when we kind of debate and give you a little bit of insight, you come back with these one-dimensional approaches saying, oh no, you're going to lose this because of bar dates and shit. Get into the deep, dark shit with us and go, hey, there might be a 1% chance that this happens. And guess what? If it is a fucking Hail Mary and we win, we win. If we lose, we already know.
Well, it was also, I do like where you're going with that conversation. I'll let you finish. Is that at least you're assigning probability and saying it's 1%. In my opinion, it'll be unprecedented. Like, this has never happened. What you guys are describing is something that's never happened in the history of mankind.
The fraud on Bed Bath and Beyond was unprecedented. It's that simple.
And it's going to be awesome.
Ryan Cohen's involvement in Bed Bath and Beyond is unprecedented. Bed Bath and Beyond going bankrupt the way it was is unprecedented. Every single thing about this is unprecedented. That's why we are waiting and speculating. It's that simple.
I would like to ask.
But Ryan Cohen owns Alibaba too. Like, what happened with Alibaba?
I don't know, but you tell me what happened to Ryan Cohen and Alibaba. I'm not in the fucking Alibaba space, am I?
It's just called the personality.
No, we don't own any
ask
explanation. He knows what he is talking about. Every single time he jump in the space like this, he's always rile everybody up. He's always rile everybody up.
It's good because a lot of us, I think, are bored and waiting for the information. So it's okay, to be honest.
Can I ask 2 questions to Blend and 1 to the group?
Yes.
My 2 questions to Blend is basically, number 1, do you have any shares? Number 2, we refer to ourselves as we, the community. You refer to us as you guys. So those are my 2 questions to you. My 3rd question is,
Daniel.
I think that the Blend is hijacking the process. We are here to listen to Zoltar in the group. You talk a lot. Maybe the community could vote you to go as a listener and let us carry on with the space.
Okay, let me just address you real quick, then I'll go because of Super Bowl. Daniel, you are a fan of Adam Aaron, are you not?
You didn't answer his question.
You're not here to discuss that.
You can leave now. Unless you've got a good point, you can leave. Yeah, he's gone. He's gone.
We are a community. You refer to us as you, and you keep refusing to let us know if you have shares. If you don't have shares, I sincerely don't think you should be here. But you keep going around. And I mean, I'm a flat earther. You're using the Glober technique. You keep going all over the place. You don't answer a question. You mention a lot of complicated things just to confuse. The bottom line is, I think that, for today, maybe another space. For today, I think you should go as a listener, leave us alone. We want to listen to the group. You can listen as a listener and later on come up and talk. You know what I mean? You're trying to disrupt something. Do you have shares? Do you have shares of that Bed Bath & Beyond?
I think he's gone.
Yeah, he's gone.
Yeah, he must have left on his own accord.
I appreciate you, Daniel. I appreciate your words. Listen, the game's not over. A lot of people want to tell us it's over. I'm looking forward to this 7th inning, 8th inning, and 9th inning. And let me tell you, the people that are coming up to bat very soon, I believe, are going to hit quite a few home runs. So, MJL, go ahead,
going,
brother.
ABC. Just keep going, man.
Hey, thanks, man. I'm just gonna leave it with this, and then I'm gonna drop down to a listener. But thanks for holding the space. So yeah, to me, it's really just who owns the corporate debt, and I think there's kind of like three parties in my mind at this point, and I'm happy to kind of like talk about it more later. But obviously it's the BNY Mellon claim, it's the potentially Brandon Meadows claim. I really find that post compelling, and then even before that, if the change of control did occur in January, okay, well in my mind that is the global note holder that I was referring to. And then, it's just really who owns that corporate debt. And whether we're talking chapter 7 or chapter 11, someone needs to make that determination if multiple things represent the bonds. Someone needs to make that determination. So in my opinion, it's not a fruitless convo, but anyways, I'm going to drop down a listener. Thanks again. I'll get a post out with kind of like the other aspects that I was talking about, but thanks again, ABC. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you, MGL. Thank you, my man. I look forward to it. We're going to jump to Beckett, who had his hand up.
Thanks, ABC. Hey, I got 20 years of bankruptcy law experience. I can tell you that it's not a liquidation, because otherwise, as Glenn said, the bar date, you couldn't file anything for 70 days prior to the bankruptcy, which never happened. These claims came after that. So it's guaranteed not a liquidation. And those claims have been accepted, which means that they are approved and they have been vetted. So it's pretty simple. I don't know where he gets his Mickey Mouse lawyer bullshit from, but in all honesty, it is what it is.
Morance's lawyer.
Yeah, ultimately, a narrative can be pointed in so many different ways, and you can make numbers look favorable or unfavorable. You can do a lot of manipulation, and because so much information is redacted, that's where generally the negative thesis comes out, is trying to prey on the stuff that we can't confirm ourselves. But the substantiated idea that bar dates and those claims are accepted well in advance. You're absolutely right. They are part of the bankruptcy proceedings. And what really interests me is, as MJL said, in summary, if the good guys are holding the debt, it will be game over and we will win. If the good guys are not holding the debt and have not freed the encumbrances and the liens and everything like that, then there's still a couple other plays, because I do believe that these activist investors came at it from many angles, and I believe there's a bunch of them and some very smart people. I even refer to Rule 305 that, Bye Bye Baby in the Texas Butterfly Channel, in a sense, could literally show up in New Jersey under 305 and say, we have a better proposition for the creditors. And the New Jersey court would have to relinquish the entire estate of that bankruptcy and hand it over to Texas's courts for bankruptcy, and then creditors could get a better proposition. There's still the idea that a new plan can drop at any moment in time, a credit bid. There's so many possible outcomes, whether it be a bunt, a first base, loading the bases, or a goddamn grand slam. And that's why we're in this, because the game's not over. So many people are going to try and tell you you've lost your bet. And, in today's game that we're about to witness between Kansas City and San Francisco, I bet you it will go down to the last minute, whether it be a fucking touchdown or an interception or a fumble. That's the beauty of this. And a lot of people look at this play and go, holy shit, you guys are degenerates and holding on through bankruptcy. No, it takes a special type of person. And I believe in the bigger issue. I believe in the mission and the vision of canceling overpaid executives, stopping naked short selling, and that's what we've kind of all joined in line with. Obviously, I'm in it for Bed Bath & Beyond, but as we know, RC said, I don't want Bed Bath & Beyond. I probably know some people that might, but what I want is Baby. And I believe that asset has already been carved out. I believe they're in charge of the debt, and we're going to find out soon. So I wish, Glenn, good luck in the outcome of the game, but it's not over. AH8, and then we'll go with Richie.
Well, ABC, thank you, because I think you tied it up beautifully. And really, all I want to say is I just want to come in and thank you all for how wonderful that was handled. I think that was one of the best ways we've handled a disruption collectively. I want to hug you all. I want to high five you all. I'm so proud of us that we are getting better and better at how we handle these difficult spaces to keep control and keep advancing what we're here to do, which is communicate, and to communicate safely, respectfully, and at times with humor. But generally, we want this to be a safe place where people enjoy themselves and come and enjoy, whether they participate or just passively listening. And all of you today who had mic access, how beautiful you handled that. I can't thank you enough. All of you, I'm so proud of how far we've come. And please, this is worth a moment of recognition, because a year ago, this would have devolved into chaos for days. And we are back up and on topic and moving forward. People, you cannot underestimate how far we've come. I am so proud of you. Please enjoy your day. ABC J, I can't get all the initials right since I'm not looking at it. Bruno, who participated in this research, I can't thank you, gentlemen, enough, especially for working cooperatively and showing the rest of the community that we can have different sources of information, different points of view, take in information and discuss it respectfully and weigh it. I am so proud of you fellas for linking up and sharing information and community. This is how it's done. Sometimes we have to put some stuff down and just get to the information and be good to each other, and look what happens. I think it's advanced the cause, and I love seeing the collective nature of this. So I will stop now, but yes, with my gratitude and appreciation for you all. Big hugs. Let's enjoy the day. Thank you all. Thank you.
I appreciate you, Jade.
Yes, Mom.
Richie, I know you had your hand up. I know Frederick, you had yours. And Judge, if any three of you want to add anything at this point in time, we can wrap it up. I say go watch a good game, and may your favorite team win. But if anybody wants to throw in some last words, I'd welcome to the table.
Hey, thanks, ABC. I don't trade bonds, and honestly, doing research has been really hard for me as far as Bed Bath & Beyond. But I did want to ask a pretty basic question. If I'm sure somebody will know, but I was just wondering how much, like, what value in bonds has been like issued by the company. So, like, if they all hit expiration, like how much would be owed, and if anybody can maybe make a post or throw it up in the nest of the QSIP or whatever it is, so I can look it up on my IBKR account. The only one I could find was the 2024, and I think there's 300 million issued. So that's all I got. This pretty basic question. Thanks again.
That's awesome, Richie. Yeah, the best place to go for bond information is cbonds.com, and you can look up the ticker of Bed Bath & Beyond. You'll have to scroll down the page, but it'll actually list the bonds, each one for 2024s, 34s, and 44s. It'll list how much is sold and what their total value that they wanted to gain out of that offering was as well. So you can see that none of all three of them have been sold in full yet. Now, whether that information is updated regularly, I think it is, but I'll let you tune into that. Frederick, my man.
Hey, real short and sweet. Zoltar, ABC, I like the way you handle that. To Jade's point, so these folks, they wait at the bottom. They wait, they sit there, and what they do is, you guys made so many great points. They became so frustrated because their king is under attack from countless positions. They don't know where it's coming from, so they sit here and they wait and they listen to everything, and then they get frustrated, and then they rage quit. That was so beautiful to listen to. Thank you, all of you.
Actually, Frederick's, I booted him down.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. Remember that whole thing, the like lost spaces are gatekeepers and stuff? Well, stay livy. But yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But everyone was able to bring really good points to the table and fight it with facts, which was nice.
Yeah, no, it was.
I appreciate you, Chad.
Yeah, I appreciate you all. And again, like, to me, the game's not over. I got in this in early January, and I've learned a lot from a lot of you. And I appreciate the community. And it's truly just a sounding board. It's a discussion, collaboration, discovery. It's nothing more than a bunch of, people getting together and talking about a stock that they like. And when people come along and say, you're degens, you're going to lose your shirt, ha, 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 it makes me wonder why why somebody would come from a perspective like that. Me, shit, you tell me that you lose an investment, I got empathy for you. I'm not going to go and trash you and come at you and make you look like a fool. I'm going to be empathetic, like shit, man. But yesterday's a lesson learned. Today is the present and tomorrow's a gift. And that's what we're hoping for, that, tomorrow is a gift, so to speak, excuse the pun. And, you're going to face it. And let me tell you, I think it will get a lot worse, because I believe the narrative is, even though we can't buy or sell, what the mandate right now is to stop any FOMO, any fear of missing out, and more people becoming aware of, the higher issue at stake, whether it be overpaid executives or institutions or certain people seller boxing companies into the ground. There's a lot at stake here, and a lot of money on both sides of the fence at stake here. So you have to expect, when you have something of this financial magnitude, you're going to get pushback, and you're going to get a lot of it. But that's also indicative that you're probably on the right side, because if you had lost, they would go spend their time on another investment where they have a lot of over leverage or risk involved. So just try and keep that in mind. Welcome to discussion. You can't change how others are, but you can change how you react. And I think what happened today was a good example. Like Jade said, we were able to better discuss it, not have it lose complete control. And Chad, I appreciate you. We gave him the opportunity to speak. It became repetitive. It didn't become any more dimensional. It was not a discussion. And I appreciate you modding. On that note, I wish everybody a great Super Bowl. Judge, I saw your hand up, man. Do you wanna add some final thoughts?
Yeah, how's it going, ABC?
Good, brother.
Hey, for the sake of doubt, because that's what that guy was here for, the claim number 18124 for 10 billion is contingent and unliquidated. Bonds are still being sold. So we've been here since I've been here 2 years now. Just be patient. If you're in, you're in. You're out, you're out. These guys that come in, they're just casting doubt, trying to rile us up, and they're taking their time away from us. So, Chad, if you kick the guy, thank you, because we don't need that shit. We've all been here long enough.
No problem.
That's all I want to say.
Appreciate you still blocking me.
I'll fix that, sir.
It's all good, man. Do what you need to do.
I'll fix it, sir. Thank you, guys.
Hey,
Enjoy the Super
yeah,
Bowl.
I appreciate that, Judge. Well said. The bonds are still trading, and that's really what pricked my curiosity when I saw a post by somebody else and sent out a couple, hey, we need eyes on this. A lot of people put their head down, did some work, and it's pretty cool to kind of share. Again, there's still a lot of speculation to this, but we've all known that from the beginning. And, Chad, you got any good words before we close out?
Yeah, it's very important that people take away.